Entry number 31 by Steve, Principal. Rain in Eorzea isn't like rain here. It's functional, inasmuch as if you stand out in it, you get clean, and if you leave stuff out in it, the stuff gets clean, and it splashes off of you, and you splash through it, but it doesn't make massive puddles or mud. It doesn't wash away houses, and it certainly doesn't leave you sopping wet. So, when one of the infrequent Oklahoma late summer thunderstorms rolled in, it was a bit of a surprise for Tsu'na, one I hadn't prepared her for. I was in the shed inspecting the roof and marveling at how it wasn't leaking when I saw her outside, totally soaked and looking shocked and miserable. It could have been a scene from a rom-com, with me taking her, wet and all, into my arms, comforting her, holding her, maybe helping her out of her dripping clothes into something more comfortable, like a nice warm bed. It could have been all of that if the words wet kitty hadn't popped into my head. She stood there, watching me have a progressively harder time trying not to laugh, until she turned and stomped off. I didn't see her for the rest of the day. At the end of the afternoon, I packed up materials and went for our shifts at the diner. I got there first, organized the stockroom until dinner, then took over at the register. I was taking an order from May when Tsu'na came in. She went to the back and I could hear her filling the mop bucket. May ordered tea and a pie. Tsu'na came up with the bucket, poured the whole thing over my head, and without a word went back to fill it again. I like to think I was perfectly dignified as I asked May, "Will that be all?" She nodded, wide-eyed, and I went to fill her order. I didn't bother to towel off. It was Tsu'na's night to mop, after all. We didn't talk until we were walking home after closing. Tsu'na broke the silence with, "Does it often rain like that?" "Depends on the area and time of year. Around here, most of the rain is in spring. Shouldn't rain too often before winter." "But how often does it make one wet like that?" "Earth rain makes you wet every time. When people expect rain, they wear waterproof clothing and carry umbrellas." "You did not think to tell me this." "I forgot. I've been in Eorzea with you for more than a year, or, well, you know. Anyway, there's like a million things I should probably tell you about that I just don't think of." "Such as?" "Hypothermia. People get sick from being too cold. Being wet can make you lose heat quickly, so if you're both cold and wet, you should do something about it." She considered this. "It was not cold when I was wet." "Right. Besides, I don't know if we can get sick." "Why not simply tell me we cannot get sick?" "Because I might be wrong, and then you wouldn't be ready for it." Another healing experiment. We were quiet for a bit, then I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. Sorry I laughed. I saw myself in the mirror. I might have laughed too. But you still poured water on me. Of course, it was a matter of principle. This is entry 32 by Tsu'na, titled Steel. And this begins with her doing rather a lot of Googling about what weather is like. Precipitation, things falling from the sky. Rain, water, makes one wet. Drizzle, water, makes one wet slowly. Downpour, water, makes one wet quickly. Freezing rain, water, mostly in cold weather, can make one wet, can freeze. Hail, layered balls of ice, causes pain, injury, damage. Sleet, solid balls of ice, causes slipperiness often accompanied by rain. Snow, fluffy ice can stick to people, can make one cold, can make one wet if it melts. Patterns, thunderstorm, rain with lightning and thunder. Tornado, wind, circular, can damage towns. Hurricane, like tornado and thunderstorm combined, can be 100 miles across. Monsoon, rain spread over days or more. Dust storm, wind blowing dust and sand, can damage skin, eyes, lungs. Weather in this world is more unpleasant and dangerous than weather in Eorzea. More than how it is when it is happening, it can cause problems after it happens, like flooding, icing, and blocking. Tornadoes I saw in Eorzea were caused by spells from large monsters. I have not seen a tornado happen randomly. Yet not only do they happen randomly in this world, Wikipedia says they happen a lot in a place called Tornado Alley, the center of which is northwest of us. So I may be seeing one in the future. I had experienced a thunderstorm. It was loud and sudden and made me wet all over in my clothes. I felt as I did while swimming in Eorzea, except that I was standing on land. My clothes pressed on me, my shoes felt hot as I walked, water ran from my hair and my beret into my eyes, and husband laughed at me when he saw me. I am not sure which of those I disliked most, but I poured a bucket of water onto husband to even things out. Husband spoke of waterproof clothing and umbrellas. I may be able to make waterproof clothing, but I wanted to see an umbrella, so I bought two. They are similar to the parasols we can make, but more similar to parasols we sometimes got as fashion accessories. The ones we can make are large and meant to stand alone in grass. We do not have recipes for parasols we can carry. These umbrellas are very mechanical. There are a number of moving parts, though not as complicated as a mammoth. The way the parts move reminded me of goblin machinery. Outdoor parasols are made of cloth and metal ingots and are not meant to move or change shape. I think I must identify the parts and make those, then put them together. Recipes upon recipes. I took one umbrella apart as best I could. I did not recognize the cloth. The rods that held the cloth up were, I think, made of steel. They are strong and thin and can flex without breaking. I do not think I can make rods like this in iron, not as thin and not as flexible. But husband said he thinks that to make steel, we need to go to an unpleasant place far to the west. Wikipedia said steel is made of iron and carbon. The page for carbon said many things I do not understand, but some of it said carbon is abundant. So I decided to let husband redeem himself for his laughter and went to talk to him at the shed. I got club sandwiches at the diner on the way and met him for lunch. He smiled as I handed him the box. Did you bring water? I shifted to Blue Mage. How much water would you like? We can have a water fight, but the sandwiches might get wet. I nodded, shifted back to Earth normal, and sat with him in the shade of the shed. I have a question, husband. What is carbon? Long answer or short answer? Wikipedia has a very long answer. Gotcha. Okay, carbon is stuff that's in lots of things, especially living things, usually mixed with something. Animals take in carbon by eating and giving it off by breathing. Plants take in carbon by breathing and use it to grow. It can also be found underground in the form of coal. Coal is carbon? There is coal in Eorzea. Yes, but it's their carbon. I don't remember any Eorzean talking about a periodic table. What is a periodic table? That's part of the long answer. Another time then, please. So we need coal to get carbon? Not necessarily. Easiest way to get carbon is to burn wood. All the not carbon burns off and leaves ash behind. That's carbon. What do you need carbon for anyway? Wikipedia says steel is made with iron and carbon. He stared at me. I thought perhaps we can make a recipe using carbon instead of potash. He stared at me. Husband? He looked away and rubbed his face. Shit, my love. We could have made steel the first night we camped out. We had not started making recipes then. Yeah, still. He looked confused. I should have thought of it. So, when the recipe wants bomb ash, the operative word isn't bomb but ash? Maybe because we all used fire starter instead of actual fire? Perhaps. My wife is fucking brilliant. Did you ever think otherwise? If I did, I was an idiot. Must be because I'm an idiot that we haven't been making steel by now. I decided to forgive him for the laughter. Shall we go camping, husband? Out by the iron nodes? That sounds wonderful. Entry 33 by Steve. Parts. We went camping out by the iron nodes. We made camp. We made a fire. We made tea. We made conversation. I still do not quite understand how things are made in this world. It's a process of small changes, just like what we've been doing with the shed, measuring and cutting and shaping and riveting. Yet there are so many things, so many different things. Pillows and blankets and tools and things. Are all of them made that way? It must take so many people. It can, yeah. There's places where you got lots of people working all the time to make things. Though if they're making a lot of a particular thing, they might make a machine to do it for them. I am a carpenter. I have made things. Yet what you do with the shed is so different from what I have done. Almost like magic. I chuckled. The Eorzean way of making things would seem like magic to people here. I mean, really, how we do things is fundamentally different from how Earth people do things. They're directly making changes to stuff, we're transforming stuff into other stuff. You mentioned it before. You called it etheric manipulation? That's how I see it, yeah. We take ether in the form of stuff, add ether in the form of aspect of crystals, and reform the ether into different stuff. So, whatever stuff the ether is in the form of is the idea we've imposed upon it. We take iron ore and impose on it the idea of ingots. We take iron ingots and hard leather and we impose on them the idea of a pouch. The important part is having the idea. You think. I think. It's close enough to how it seems to work that it's my working theory. She nodded thoughtfully and sipped her tea. Then she brought out of her inventory what I thought at first was a metal squid before recognizing it as an umbrella without the cloth. I bought umbrellas. I am trying to make one. I am taking this one apart to see how it works. This is what I wanted steel for. Sure. How are you going about it? I am not certain. This is made of parts I do not have recipes for. These metal rods, and this big metal rod, and this metal tube, and these things that connect the rods? Hinge joints. Thank you. And this piece of wood for the handle and the cloth. We have recipes for parasols for lawns that are just cloth and steel, but they do not open and close. Yes, they do not work like this one does. And they do not have so many parts that move. Still, it is all steel and cloth and wood, so I should be able to make an umbrella by combining these things, should I not? Maybe, but it's a bit of a complex idea with the parts interconnecting and interacting and all. I might be able to do it because I grew up with umbrellas and I know how they work. You might need to build it up from smaller ideas, like steel rods, steel tube, steel hinge joints, cloth cover, and wooden haft. Make those things as separate recipes, then a new recipe that combines them together, guessing goldsmithing for the final step. She slowly rotated the squid by the handle, watching the parts fall into place. Is it silly for me to try to make one, since they are in stores? Not at all. You're trying to work out how to make something new by assembling parts. I plan to do the same thing with a bicycle, but this looks like a better starter project. This way we can get used to doing bigger and bigger things and thinking about all the parts that go into them. This is what I want the shed for doing bigger things. You do want to build airships. I would love to build airships, but they'd be kind of conspicuous. I got out my phone and brought up a picture I'd saved. I was thinking about trying for one of these. She peered at the picture. This is a bus? General terms for it include camper, recreational vehicle, and mobile home. This particular one is called a Winnebago. Mobile home? Kind of a house on wheels. It's got a bed, a bathroom, a shower, a kitchen, a living space, and lots of cabinets. Can we buy one? They start around $150,000. That is a lot of pretzels. It is, which is one of the reasons I'd like to make one. The other is I'd like to try to figure out how to make mounts. She tilted her head and thought. A mount we can live in? And summon and dismiss at will. She studied the picture again. This looks like a lot of parts, husband. Yep, a lot of steel, glass, rubber, and other stuff. We probably need to do like the airship builders and think in terms of components. It will take a lot of time and recipes and ideas. Yeah, which is why we should start with something small to get practice, like a bicycle. She held up her squid. Or an umbrella. Or an umbrella. In the morning, we collected ash from the remains of the fire and tried to make steel. It was around noon by the time we finally got something we were happy with. We then spent the day mining a ridiculous amount of iron. After all, we need to think big. Entry 34 by Tsu'na. Ideas. We made a lot of steel ingots. It is perhaps not enough to make a Winnebago, but enough to make many things. It was enough for me to make an umbrella. I wrote recipes for the ideas that made the idea. I wrote a recipe for steel rods, another recipe for steel hinge joints, another for steel tubes. I made all the parts, then wrote another recipe that used all the parts plus some hempen cloth and some maple lumber to make an umbrella. Adjusting the number of shards I needed took time, but in the end it worked. I had an umbrella that would open and close. It would not stop rain, though. Husband used the garden hose to spray water in the air, and I stood under the falling water with my umbrella. It did not hit me all at once as a thunderstorm did, but it did leak through the cloth and drip on me. So now I have a recipe for an umbrella that does not block rain. Perhaps it is a parasol for the sun. Husband said things about tightness of weave and surface tension. He suggested I try using latex and the hempen cloth to make what he called rubberized burlap. So, a new recipe for rubberized burlap and another recipe for the umbrella to use it. That umbrella did block water, and the rubberized burlap might also work for clothing that does not get wet. As I worked making the recipes for the different parts, I thought about what husband said about how things we make are ideas we have. I thought about how he makes the panels for the shed, how he starts with boards and measures and marks and cuts. He does not make recipes for the boards in the size and shape he needs. He cuts pieces off of boards until they are the right size. We did not do this with the aorta crafting. We have wood, We do our crafting, and we have a thing made of wood. We do not have bits of wood left over. With the umbrella, I was making a number of steel rods. The rods that would make up the umbrella would be different sizes, but the rods I made were the same size. If what husband said was true, I was making the idea of a steel rod that would go into the umbrella. Once in the umbrella, the rod would be whatever size was needed, as with the cloth and the lumber. After testing the umbrella that worked, I made more parts and made another umbrella, then another. I felt how the umbrellas worked. I watched the rods move and the hinged joints hold and the cloth stretched. And then I wrote a recipe for an umbrella that involved steel and cloth and wood without the parts. Because I had the idea of an umbrella that worked, and I wanted the steel and cloth and wood to be formed into that idea. And the recipe worked, and the umbrella was exactly like the other three I made. I am a crafter. I craft. Perhaps I craft umbrellas. Perhaps I craft recipes for umbrellas. Perhaps I craft ideas that go into recipes for umbrellas. I am a crafter and a gatherer and a cleaner and an innkeeper and a bouncer. I am many things here. I was many things in Eorzea too, but they were different things. In Eorzea, I was a fighter and an explorer. I was an adventurer. And while living in this world is a sort of adventure, it is not the sort of adventure I am used to. Perhaps it is enough of an adventure. I have husband. I have a world to explore. I have things about myself that I have not yet discovered. Perhaps I also need something to fight. I dry out a little bit as I read aloud, so frequent water breaks and sips and stuff. Entry 35 by Steve. Vandalism. The shed was originally big enough for maybe a pickup truck and some storage space. Since we weren't planning to put a truck in it, there would be plenty enough space for a workbench and lots of storage. Not that that could match our inventory. 999 of anything is a bit much for a cabinet, but it would let us offload small quantities of stuff we didn't want to throw away. Door frames are a bit more complicated than simple wood panels. You have to allow for it in the wall. You have to make it strong enough to hold the door. And if it's a supporting wall, which thankfully the shed doesn't exactly have any of, it needs to be structurally strong enough for weight pressing down from above. It would be simplest to not bother with the original bay door, but it's Sam's shed and he might someday want one. So, current plan is a wall with a frame with a smaller wall inside bolted in place. Won't be big enough for a Winnebago, but then neither is the entire shed. Maybe we'll find a barn or something in the future. Probably bass backwards to build the door panel before the door frame, but the panel was just more of the same of what we've been doing, so I went ahead and finished it first. We lean it against the finished side of the shed. It can stay there until I figure out the frame. Or maybe actually ask someone about how to make one. Tsu'na and I broke for dinner at the diner before my bouncer shift. She'd been coming to the pit and reading while I was on duty. Never gotten to Zane Grey myself, I'm more Tony Ellerman. But this time she said she wanted to go back from the air, which on Gubu/head can really only happen at night. So we stopped at the store to pick up a couple LED flashlights and she headed off to explore. The guys at the pit pretty much keep to themselves. Tsu'na and I work there, but we're still newcomers and outsiders who don't talk a lot about where we're from or what we did there. I tell them we were fighting overseas, but I don't want to talk about that too much in case I run into an actual combat vet who knows to talk into signs better than I do. Outside of that, I don't have a lot in common with these folks, so I smile, nod, listen a lot. Try to be a friendly face, even when I'm telling someone he's had enough for the evening, and stay courteously aloof with any women that get brought in. I suspect neither the guys nor Tsu'na particularly want me getting too friendly with the women. Last night was the only fight I actually had to break up. A couple guys got into a shoving match, so I went over and got between them. They both turned on me. I grabbed a shirt in each hand, hoisted and dumped them both onto their backs onto the pool table. But I kept smiling. The friendly face that broke up their fight. I let go of their shirts, asked, "We good?" and got nods in response. My work was done. I hung out after closing while Sam locked up. I considered getting out my journal to see where Tuna was, but I didn't feel like explaining a GPS enabled book, so I sipped a cider as Sam went through the motions. Bam bam. Sam and I looked at each other. The hell was that? Was it coming from the shed? Sam reached under the bar and got out a shotgun I didn't know he had. Oklahoma low grade bar, so not a shock, but still something to remember. Bam bam, bam bam. We went quietly out the back door. I took lead, and as we came alongside the shed, I motioned Sam to stop and crouch. I did the same, got out my phone, and turned on selfie cam to use it as a mirror to look around the corner. Oh, I relaxed. It's just my wife. Your wife? The hell's she doing? The noise stopped, and Tsuna came around the corner in her dancer gear. She looked down at me. What are you doing, husband? I rose. Checking the premises for signs of vandalism. Seen any? She glanced back around the corner. I may have caused some. We followed her around the shed. She'd set up a camp lantern near the door panel, which she'd apparently been using for target practice, judging by the dents and splintering. As we studied it, I swept my arms around her from behind. I'd have made you a training dummy if you'd asked me. I did not plan this. It was an impulse decision. Yes, I am sorry. I will help you make a new one. I'd appreciate it. Guess this one's yours now. Sam peered at the damage to the boards. The hell were you hitting it with? She held up her dancer weapons. By throwing chakrams. What, those rings? Like Xena? I chuckled. Yeah, I married Xena. I released Suna and waved Sam to the side. Why don't you give him a demonstration, my love? She nodded and went into combat stance. Bam bam! The ring slammed into the wood and rebounded into her waiting hands. Bam bam! Bam bam! She picked up the rhythm as she worked into her combos. Bam bam! Bam bam! Bam bam! Bam! She caught the rings and shifted smoothly into a passive stance. Sam stared at her open-mouthed. I smiled. Magnificent, isn't she? Where'd you learn to do that? We had the option of training in different exotic weapons. The Army teaches you to use those? I never said we were the Army. You said deployment overseas. Yeah, but not the Army. We were contractors. As Sam opened his mouth again, I added, which we're not supposed to talk about. Yeah, right. So you can do this too? Sure, I'd show you, but I don't have my rings right now. Maybe tomorrow? Yeah, okay. I walked over and picked up the lantern. I think you've done enough vandalism tonight, my love. Let's go home. We left Sam staring at the damaged panel in the dwindling light. As we got out of his sight, I asked, so what brought on this particular impulse? I was feeling restless, I think. We had not used the chakrams in so long. I wanted to feel more whole. I understand. It's been pretty quiet around here. Kind of like we're newbies all over again. Why didn't you use a tree? It would upset the seed seers if I heard a tree. I suppose it would. Okay, let's plan some more hunting before too long. Yes, husband. After you help me make a new door panel. Yes, husband. Entry 36 by Tsu'na. Freedom. I went to explore last night while husband was on bouncer shift. He insisted I take flashlights with me, and I'm glad he did. Eorzea never got completely dark, but this world comes closer. The stars are bright and clear when there are no clouds, but the land below is very dark, and the stars do not give enough light for me to read my journal's map. With a flashlight and making slow progress, I was able to map land south of Wyatt. I found nodes we should try on our next camping trip. The texture of the land is similar to where we have found tin in Eorzea. I made sweeps of the land to thoroughly map it, then turned off my light and lay back on the gubu's head. I study stars as an astrologian, but mostly certain constellations are related to my skills. Those constellations are not in this world. I need to try my skills under the sky. But it was peaceful and quiet and pretty up in the air above the trees and under the stars. There has been so much peace since coming here. There is the peace in husband's arms. There is the zen-like peace of working on the shed. There is the simple peace of making 100 pretzels. And there was the peace in the sky. When I came to Limsa, I only really knew peace. Since then, I saw many kinds of war. Everyone who is not a leader knows war is bad. People die, homes are destroyed, families are damaged, land is ruined. But people who do enough fighting, while they know war is bad, also know that fighting is something they can do. It becomes a part of them, a part of us, a part of me. It is as natural for me to draw my sword or book as it is to draw my hatchet or needle. Yet I have drawn neither sword nor book since coming here, and while I do not truly wish to look for people to kill, I wonder about this part of me that I've not used. Perhaps I should return to hunting. Deer are so easy to kill that it is more like gathering than battle. Are there creatures then? I passed over a fenced field that had large dark shapes that could be beastskin. If they respawn, their keeper would not miss them. Husband could perhaps have told me what all the stars I was seeing were. I must remember to ask him why a lot of stars seem clustered together in a long cloud. It is surely the sort of thing people would notice and study and add names to. I could have headed back to Wyatt right then and asked him, but I was content for the moment to lie in the sky. What if I fell asleep there? What would people think waking up to the sight of a gubu floating in the morning sky? I did not fall asleep. I was too torn to sleep. I was compelled to simply lay there and soak in the peace, but I was also restless, wanting to do something with my hands. It annoyed me then, it annoys me now, that I cannot settle on one or the other. There should be the stillness husband talked about before. I do not know how long I did lie there, but in time I gave up and returned to Wyatt. I walked to the pit but did not go in. I let my restlessness draw me to the shed. Perhaps I could have done carpentry. I did not. I took out a camp lantern, set it up near what husband called the door panel leaning against the shed, and contemplated the woodwork. Husband wants the shed to be built. I agree that it should be built, but it was not what I wanted right then. A sword is awkward against a flat surface. An axe would be too easy. A lance might get stuck. A bow would be too slow, fire would be too extreme, a water cannon would be more messy than effective, and I wanted action, movement. I shifted to dancer. I brought up my rings. Bam bam. Cascade. Twist, twist, twist clockwise. Rings flung parallel to the ground, one after the other. The ring slammed into the wood and bounced back to me. Bam bam. Fountain. Twist counterclockwise and fling. Bam bam. Fountain fall. Spin in a wheel, fling overhand with full force. Bam. Reverse cascade. Throw both rings together underhand. Bam bam. Bam bam. Bam bam bam. I let my mind go blank as I flowed into the combo. It was motion. It was force. It was violence. It was freedom. It was also loud. Husband and Sam came out to see what I was doing. I did not know if husband would be angry at me for damaging his door panel. I did not know what I would do with an angry husband. We had not truly fought since I knocked him out with my book. A part of me wanted to see what would happen. What happened was that he accepted me. He put his arms around me and we talked about it. He stood aside and asked me to demonstrate for Sam. I do not think he forgave me because I do not think he blamed me, though I will be helping him make a new door panel. He walked home with me holding my hand. When we got home, he kissed me, he massaged me, and he held me in bed. He was not angry, nor was he joyous. He was accepting of his wife who damaged his door panel simply because she felt the need to do so. It felt wonderful. It was another kind of peace, one I could fall asleep to. Entry 37 by Steve. Show. We got working on the shed around mid-morning. Tsu'na seemed remarkably contented sawing boards for the new door panel. Guessing she slept well. We didn't really talk about what compelled her to drive chakrams into wood at velocity, but whatever it was, it seemed to be out of her system. We were done with the riveting by mid-afternoon. Sam brought out a couple ciders for us and stayed to check on our work. I think this is sturdier than it ever was before, and it used to be sheet metal. More like sheet rust, am I right? Yeah, maybe. Going to redo the wiring? If I have to. Not really a wiring guy, though. You know anyone in town? I can ask around, but no one else works for beer. Not even cider? Well, we shouldn't really need more than lighting. I can give it a try. Here, I'll even pre-jinx it. How hard can it be? You're the one who used wood. Your fault if it burns down. So no target practice today? Oh, right. I promised you a show, didn't I? Tsu'na and I set our bottles aside and led Sam around to the battered bay door panel. Sam hadn't noticed before that we had matching outfits that day, but he did then. You guys wearing some kind of uniform? The initial dancer gear looks rather Aladdin-esque down to the facial veil. Players tend to wear the weirdest things as dancers, including bikinis, baby doll dresses, ballroom wear, and tuxedos. We'd settled on a glamour consisting of black pants and boots and the white scion jacket, along with white gloves and a gray fedora. The effect is somewhere between radio cowboy and neo swing, but I, for one, am not embarrassed to wear it in public, though it is odd to see the two of us dressed the same way. Different training schools have different outfits they favor, like a karate suit. This is what we wear when we're practicing with the rings. What we wear out in the field is another matter. Huh. We stood side by side in front of what was now the target panel. We brought out our rings. We eyed the wood, gave each other a nod, and started to move. Bam, 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 bam. The rings flew, impacted, and flew back. The wood started to show more splinters than before. As we worked into combos, we began to synchronize not out of intent, but simply returning to the rhythm we developed between us. Bam, 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 bam. The noise doubled from two sets of rings hitting together. The panel was beginning to shake and bounce from the force. And she'd been right. It felt good to move like this. I had no idea how much I'd missed it, throwing my body into destruction. Crack! One of the boards gave way under the rings. The rebound was a little wild. We had to jump for the final catch. I contemplated the damage, then turned to Sam with a grin. Well, guess we showed it who's boss. Sam stared at the broken panel. So that's how you guys fought where you were? Nah, we hardly ever had a reason to use the rings. Usually we were more up close and personal. But it's good exercise, you know? Great cardio and reflex training. Kinda loud though, huh? Well, they make a lot less noise hitting a body. Right. Uh, can I? Yeah, sorry, no. It's easy to lose control of those things, and if you got hurt, I'd blame myself. Besides, kind of a faux pas where we come from to ask to borrow a weapon. Faux pas, huh? Yeah. Ever see those scenes in the movies where the bad guy borrows a gun and shoots the guy he borrowed it from? It's like that. Nothing personal. We've just been trained to not surrender our weapons. We stowed our rings and retrieved our sighters. Sam joined us on a bench we'd made. And you can't tell me where that was. Classified. Or who you were fighting? Or why? That too, sorry. Yeah, so they ever fight each other? I hesitated. Once. Yeah. Not as enemy combatants. It was supposed to be a practice exercise, but we hadn't been getting along. This was a little while before we were married, and we kind of had communication issues. I mean, I had a thing for her from when I first saw her. Tsu'na added, he was the most interesting man in the world for me. But there was some tension between us that just grew. I thought she was always putting me down. I thought he was trying to control me. There's a classic trope about how meeting your gods often doesn't turn out well. And while Tsu'na never thought of the guiding, encouraging, nebulous presence in her head as a god, it was still disillusioning for her to find out it was just some dude. And not only that, but some dude who thought he knew everything and thought he knew the best way to do everything. So she had pushed back. She had distrusted. She had belittled. I admit I have an overly high opinion of myself, but the experience ate away at my self esteem, which made me push back as well. So things kind of got out of hand. I told you we trained in a bunch of weapons, right? So we were having a practice fight where we'd switch off weapons depending on what the other person did. I might come at her with brass knuckles. She pulls knives, so I switch to staff. So she switches to a sword. Sam squinted at me. Sword. Sword. Anyway, it got heavy. I looked up and met Tuna's eyes. Serious. There was all this tension that had been building for a while, especially since we kept going into situations where we had to rely on each other to come out alive. And we started to let it out in that fight. It got nasty. We both had our training and our practice, and it was all just coming out right then. Sam nodded slowly. So what happened? Well, Tuna had switched to Summoner, a subclass of Arcanist and our most kick-ass class. When I saw the Grimoire come out, I figured the gloves were coming off. Never mind that Arcanist was her first ever class and therefore tended to be her go-to in a lot of situations, such as healing. I wasn't thinking that clearly. Or, in terms Sam could understand. She reached for a medkit for a painkiller. I thought she was going for a gun. So I reacted, grabbed my bow, and got a shot off. He has good reflexes, Tsu'na murmured. And got her in the leg. Caught her by surprise. She falls down. I'm looking at her on the ground with an arrow in her, and I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? I drop the bow and run over to her to do something, but she's got good reflexes too. She's trying to deal with the arrow, but she sees me coming and whacks me with her book. A book. She hit you with a book. Ha! Show him your book, my love. Tsu'na raised an eyebrow, but obligingly brought out her summoner book. The Emerald Index is clad heavily in dark green metal with light green detailing and a wavy texture. Shapes were worked into the spine and cover edges, including what looked like small blades. She'd only had a mithril-clad book when she hit me, which was plenty hard enough, but I wanted to see Sam's reaction. Sam was speechless. He stared at the book, touched the cover with a finger, tapped at it with a fingernail, and tried to raise the end of it with one hand. The hell is this thing made of? The kind of metal used in armor plating. She made it herself, kind of a hobby of hers. He looked up at her. And you hit Steve with this? It was handy. You just carry this thing around with you. It has my notes in it. And I like, she glanced at me, decorating it. It passes the time. And it works as a weapon in a pinch, I added. Knocked me out cold. I don't know how long I was out. Tsu'na pursed her lips. I did not know why he was running at me. I thought he was going to attack me since I was on the ground. I did not think much of him at the time. But after I hit him, I saw he did not even have a weapon, and I understood. All I could think was, oh gods, what have I done? I smiled ruefully. When I came to, my head was in her lap. First thing we both said to each other was, Tsu'na and I looked at each other and said in unison, are you all right? I turned to Sam. That was kind of the turning point in our relationship. He looked at me. He looked at Tsu'na. He glanced once more at the book and finally said, you folks are weird. You know that, right? You have no idea of what we call normal where we come from. Suppose I don't. He was quiet for a moment and said, y'all might not want to be too weird around here. Folks might not know what to do about it. We've talked about that. We'll try. He nodded, stood and turned to look at the shed again. Seriously, damn nice work. Thanks. When we're done, we'll work on the rest of your tables. And I'll keep the cider in stock. After he headed back to the bar, I scooted over close to my wife. Did you know we were weird, my love? I had not noticed.